Let's talk about what just happened in the JJK manga, but spoilers beware. And this is absolutely hilarious. All of the memes have been top notch, but I've already gotten some questions about how exactly this went down, so let's talk about it. Alright, so first up we got this question from Kakibosh who asks, could you clarify the panel to the left of Inumaki saying don't move? Is that Rika vanishing with Yuta's body? The flooring looks like the room they were in as opposed to the domain itself. How likely is it that Gota just falls on the floor before that purple is even fired at Sukuna? Do I think Sukuna will eat him? So first, let's take a look at the panel he's referring to. And apologies for the crop, but you guys know I got to be careful when posting these types of images, but this is the panel in reference here. And like Kaki said, you can tell that the floor is definitely not the floor of the domain, so this is somewhere else. So what I believe this to be, and I also asked some people in my Discord, is this is Inumaki's blood hitting the floor from his throat, just getting eviscerated from using cursed speech on Sukuna. The very next panel following that one is this one, so I think it was just leading up to that reveal, and I think Inumaki's blood, especially given like how much we can see here, would make sense to be hitting the floor. I don't think it was the same exact room where Rika or Yuta were or anything like that. So while I do think this hollow purple isn't going to be what defeats Sukuna, original body, so we'll have to see how exactly that plays out, but he's not done yet. Next up, speaking of all that blood and the damage to Inumaki's throat, we have this from Zay who says, their theory is that if Inumaki tried to use curse speech on Sukuna, his throat would instantly and violently explode due to how much more powerful Sukuna is than any sooner. Inumaki is obviously far, far weaker than Sukuna, so I think even with the damage we saw him take, like his throat looks like it really did explode. Again, blood was pouring onto the floor. And even then, I think he was only able to do this because Sukuna is so beat. Because I've also got that same question from Rito here. And shout out for being a YouTube member. You're a legend. Our first emote's almost done. The second one is in progress, so y'all get excited for that. But he wants to know how the voice recorder got into the domain when Unlimited Void has a barrier and Malevolent Shrine is small and raining down upon Unlimited Void. So shouldn't it have been destroyed if it came from the outside in? Or did Yuta's blue somehow like drag it in with its, attractive force? So here's my take on this, but we don't have a definitive answer. And I'm aware, and then when the moment was right, used the blue to bring it towards him, meaning the recorder was always within the domain. It didn't have to pass through Malevolent Shrine or anything like that. Or Todo clapped it in at some point, and then Yuta, when the moment was right, used the blue to suck it in, to have the don't move moment happen. So I don't think it makes sense for the recorder to have been outside the domain and somebody had like thrown it through, because yes, you're right. Not only does Gojo's barrier exist, but Malevolent Shrine is active outside the barrier and would have presumably eviscerated anything that came into contact with it. So I think the only things that make sense are it was already in there or Todo clapped it in somehow. Now, I also saw people ask, why didn't the recorder get eviscerated by Malevolent Shrine inside the domain? And I know it's going to activate and everything in there is going to be affected by it. And to address the second half of Rito's questions here, I do agree that this hollow purple isn't going to finish Sukuna. Now, it may go off, who knows exactly what will happen, but I don't think Yuta's barrier broke from pulling the voice recorder in. We kind of already covered that. But finally, the skulls inside the domain battle, those are just part of Sukuna's domain, his Malevolent Shrine. Whenever he summons it, he has the literal shrine itself surrounded by all the skulls. So those weren't from outside. Those are just getting pulled around inside because of Gojo's blue. And then speaking of the sure hit effects of the domains, Sam asked, once Sukuna was paralyzed by Inumaki's don't move, shouldn't Unlimited Void have hit him since he wasn't touching Yuta? And no, I know what you're referring to here. This is back during the original Gojo Sukuna fight, there's a lot of complex things happening, but in this case, wow. So Sukuna doesn't have to touch Yuta to be immune to Unlimited Void. As long as his Malevolent Shrine is up, that's essentially protecting him. What you're thinking of back during the earlier fight was during one of the domains, Sukuna intentionally turned off his sure hit on the inside in order to empower his strikes on the outside. So because his sure hit was off on the inside, he had to touch Gojo to be immune to Unlimited Void. But that wasn't the case in this situation. Next, for anybody who saw my leaks video last night, I talked about how one of you guys had recently talked about Inumaki, and in H. Miraz, that was actually him. So man, you must have felt something in the air. You definitely got to let us know what your other predictions and feelings are. And actually, with that being said, he asked, would Nobara come back? And I absolutely think that's on the table. This is something I've talked about in previous videos, so you can check to come back to have some sort of huge moment, but that's absolutely on the table. Our next question comes from Twinticles, and y'all can pause to read the whole thing if you'd like, but what he's essentially asking is, could there be a relate person that Rika consumed? Meaning, the more of someone Rika consumed, the stronger that copied curse technique would be for Yuta. And in my opinion, I don't think so. I would imagine it's just binary, like you copy it, then the effectiveness, the output is then just dependent on how Okkotsu is using it. So it could be a product of his inexperience using cleave, or it could just be that, you know, in that situation, it wasn't going to be the strongest thing to do. Sukuna was obviously still pretty powerful in that moment. So I don't personally think that that relationship is. And then finally got this question from Bepkiz on, will Yuta miss Hollow Purple and Sukuna have another ass pull? Will everyone have to fight him in his domain? And I touched on this a little bit earlier, so I'll say it again, that whatever happens, Sukuna's not going home after this. There's too much still to happen in the story. This Hollow Purple will not destroy Sukuna and everybody goes home happy. So anyone that's like actually expecting that, I think should probably adjust their expectations, or else they're going to be disappointed. So the real interesting question is, what shape is this going to take? Will he miss the Hollow Purple? Will he not actually finish it for some reason? Or will he finish it? Will he hit Sukuna, but it's just not going to be as powerful or efficient, because this whole chapter basically emphasized how Yuta is not Gojo, right? He was struggling to control the Limitless, multiple flashbacks about all of this. So it would make sense in my mind for this Hollow Purple to not get the job done, but super rough, and maybe he's forced into a corner, activates the merger, or does something else drastic, right? Or Uraume swoops in and, you know, saves their favorite man. We'll just have to see what happens here. But in any case, I don't think it'll be an ass pull. I have more faith in Gege's writing than that, but we'll have to see. Anyways, that's all for this one, y'all. Thank you guys so much for the questions. And y'all let me know down in the comments how you think that recorder actually got there and what was actually happening during that sequence, because I would love to hear it. And finally, y'all, as always, thank you so much for watching.